Welcome to TimeOut, an exciting new educational video series brought to you by First Case. In this series, we're bringing you easy-to-access education with no fees and no tests. Break free from boring staff meetings and dive into educational content that you can put into practice immediately. So let's get started with today's episode of TimeOut.
Welcome to TimeOut. Today's episode is all about the timeout, that most sacred of moments within the intraoperative period. I'm going to tell you what it is, review the best practices for a proper timeout, and also tell you what it isn't. Okay, so first, what is it? A timeout in the OR is the moment prior to the incision that the entire surgical team pauses, confirming for a final time that they are performing the correct procedure on the correct patient and on the correct side. I called it the most sacred of moments in the intraoperative period because it really kind of is. It's our last chance, our final pause to confirm that everything is correct, to ensure that we're moving forward without error. Now, to put that in perspective, a 2018 study assessing surgical adverse events and near misses at 86 Veterans Health Administration facilities found that almost 30% of the adverse events could be attributed to an incomplete or incorrectly performed surgical timeout. Yikes. Obviously, we want to avoid surgical error. So what are the best practices for performing a timeout? Best practices include having a designated person lead the timeout, using a standardized script that addresses all the elements of the timeout, including, at least at a minimum, the patient identity, the surgical site, and the procedure to be done. The timeout should be performed after the patient is draped and immediately prior to the incision, with all parties in the operating room actively participating. Standardized scripts are a great way to make sure that all elements of the timeout are addressed. You may have a card you wear on your badge, or the script may be posted on the OR wall. But no matter where it's located, having a standardized script and method for performing the timeout helps make sure everyone in the OR does the timeout the same way, every single time. And OR leaders, remember, having the support of OR leadership and hospital administration for the timeout helps ensure buy-in and participation by the entire surgical team. Okay, that's what it's supposed to be. But we all know that textbook definitions and reality don't always match. Reality says that oftentimes when the circulator leads the timeout, he or she is stuck yelling over the noise, desperately trying to get everyone's attention. And you can forget about everyone actually standing still and participating. The timeout is not something to be rushed through, with the leader speaking so fast that no one can understand anything that's being said. It's also not something to be done flippantly. I once heard a nurse do her timeout by saying, "Doctor, this woman wants her tubes tied." And that was her timeout. No. The timeout is also not a significant amount of time that's going to delay the current case or the following cases. Delays are more likely to come from unforeseen issues during the surgery or from pre-op or turnovers or instrument availability, etc., not the timeout. So complaints about the timeout delaying the procedure really are unfounded. The timeout is important. It exists to help us prevent error. It should be a pause involving the entire surgical team that occurs after draping is completed and immediately prior to the incision. We're not above making a mistake. The timeout helps us protect our patients and prevent error. All right, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I genuinely hope that you have found something beneficial in this first season of TimeOut. I'm your host, Melanie Perry. Stay tuned as we dive further into the OR in season 2 of TimeOut.
That's going to do it for this episode of TimeOut. As a reminder, you can help support us with a like, a share, or by subscribing to this channel. You can also subscribe to the First Case podcast on your favorite podcast application. I would appreciate a rating and a review because your feedback is important to this show. On behalf of everyone at First Case, thank you for watching this episode of TimeOut.